The morning shift at Miami International Airport was chaos. Travelers rushing, announcements blaring, and officers scanning the crowd. K9. Officer Jake Rivera tightened his grip on the leash as his partner, Max, a German shepherd with a reputation for never missing a scent, suddenly froze. Max's ears twitched, his body tense. Then, without warning, he let out a sharp, urgent bark. Jake knew that sound. It wasn't for drugs or explosives. It was something else. His eyes followed Max's gaze. A man in a crisp suit stood near the security line, his posture relaxed, his smile polite. Beside him, a small boy clutched a tattered stuffed rabbit. The boy's eyes were downcast, his shoulders hunched. The man placed a hand on the child's back, guiding him forward, but the boy flinched. Jake's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Max barked again, louder this time, pulling against the leash. The man glanced over, his smile never fading. "Problem, officer?" he asked smoothly. Jake forced a neutral expression. "Just routine, sir. Mind if we ask a few questions?" The man nodded, but his grip on the boy's shoulder tightened. The boy didn't speak, didn't look up. And in that moment, Jake knew. Max wasn't just alerting him. He was warning him. The man's passport read David Mercer, but Jake had learned long ago that names on paper didn't always mean much. The boy's documents listed him as Lucas Mercer, age 7, but the child's hollow stare told a different story. Max refused to settle, his low growl vibrating through the leash. Jake radioed for backup, keeping his tone casual. "Just a routine secondary inspection, sir. Won't take long." David's smile stayed in place, but his fingers twitched, just once, before he gestured toward the security checkpoint. "Of course, officer. We've got a flight to catch, but I understand." His voice was smooth, practiced. Too practiced. The boy, Lucas, shuffled forward without a word, his small fingers digging into the stuffed rabbit's worn fabric. Jake crouched to his level. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" No response, not even a blink. Behind them, Max let out another sharp bark, his nose twitching toward the boy's backpack. David's hand shot out, gripping the strap. "He's shy, doesn't like strangers," he said, pulling the boy closer, too close. Jake's instincts screamed. Something was off. The way the man spoke about the boy, not to him, the way Lucas stiffened at his touch. Backup arrived, Officer Maria Lopez, sharp-eyed and quick on her feet. She took one look at Max's agitation and nodded at Jake. "Let's move this to a private room." David's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. As they walked, Jake caught a flicker of movement in a mirrored wall. David's reflection showed his free hand slipping into his coat pocket. Too fast, too deliberate. Max lunged forward, teeth bared, just as David pulled out a phone. "Easy, boy," Jake yanked the leash, but Max's snarl didn't fade. David chuckled, holding up the device. "Just checking my messages. No need for the drama." The private room was cold, sterile. Lucas sat stiffly in a chair, his rabbit clutched to his chest. Maria knelt beside him, her voice soft. "Hey, sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" Silence. David sighed, leaning against the wall. "Like I said, he doesn't talk much. Trauma." Maria ignored him, pulling a crayon from her pocket. She slid it across the table. Lucas stared at it, then slowly reached out. His hand trembled as he drew a single shaky line, then another. A crude shape took form. A dog. Max whined, nudging Jake's leg. Jake's radio crackled. "Dispatch." "Rivera, we've got a hit on that passport. It's flagged." David's posture didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his phone. Jake kept his voice steady. "What's the flag A?" Pause. Then, "Child reported missing." 3 months ago, North Carolina. The air in the room thickened. Lucas's crayon snapped in half. David's smile finally slipped. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, but his voice had lost its smooth edge. Maria's fingers hovered over her holster. Max let out a low, warning growl. Then Lucas spoke, a whisper so faint Jake almost missed it. "That's not my name." David moved faster than Jake expected, lunging for the boy. Max was faster. The dog's teeth sank into David's sleeve, yanking him back with a snarl. Lucas scrambled away, his rabbit tumbling to the floor. Maria's hand was on her gun. "Don't move." David froze, his breath ragged. Jake snatched the stuffed rabbit and felt something hard inside, too hard for stuffing. He ripped the seam. A tiny USB drive fell into his palm. David's face went pale. Outside the room, airport chaos continued, oblivious. Inside, the truth was unraveling. Lucas wasn't Lucas. David wasn't David. And Max, well, Max had known all along. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in Jake's palm as he stared at it, his mind racing with possibilities. David, or whatever his real name was, had gone completely still, his eyes locked onto the small device with a mix of panic and calculation. Lucas, the boy who wasn't Lucas, had pressed himself into the corner of the room, his small frame shaking, his eyes wide with fear, but also something else, relief? Recognition? Max stood between the boy and David, his body tense, a low growl rumbling in his chest, ready to strike if the man so much as twitched. Maria had already radioed for additional backup, her voice steady but urgent, and within minutes the room was swarming with officers and federal agents. Jake handed the USB to a tech specialist who had arrived with the feds, a grim-faced woman who nodded silently before disappearing with it. David was cuffed and read his rights, but his demeanor had shifted entirely. The polished, confident facade was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating silence. He didn't resist, didn't protest, just watched everything with detached interest, as if he were already planning his next move. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple kidnapping. The boy, what was his real name, hadn't spoken again, but his eyes kept darting to the door, as if expecting someone else to walk in. Maria stayed close to him, her voice gentle as she tried to coax more information from him, but he remained silent, his fingers twisting the torn fabric of his stuffed rabbit. Then the tech specialist returned, her expression unreadable. She motioned for Jake and the lead FBI agent to step aside. "This isn't just about the kid," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "That USB has encrypted files, shipping manifests, financial transactions, and what looks like a list of names, children's names." Jake's blood ran cold. "Human trafficking?" The specialist nodded. "And high level. This isn't some small-time operation. There are codes here that match patterns we've seen in international cases." The FBI agent swore under his breath. "We need to get the boy somewhere safe. Now." Jake glanced back at Lucas. No, not Lucas. The boy needed his real name. But before he could say anything, Max suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking up. A second later, Jake heard it too, a faint rhythmic beeping coming from the boy's backpack, which had been left on the floor near the door. The tech specialist's eyes widened. "Move. Now." She yanked Jake and the agent back just as the backpack erupted into a deafening static burst, the sound screeching through the room like feedback from a microphone. Everyone flinched, hands going to their ears, but there was no explosion, no physical damage, just noise, a distraction. When the static cut off as abruptly as it had started, the room was in chaos. Officers were shouting, the FBI agent was barking orders into his radio, and David was grinning. a slow, knowing smirk that made Jake's stomach twist. Then Jake's gaze snapped to the corner where the boy had been. The boy was gone. Maria was on the ground, dazed, clutching her head. He just bolted," she gasped. "I couldn't stop him." Max was already at the door, his nose to the ground, his entire body quivering with urgency. Jake didn't hesitate. "He's running! Max, find him!" The dog took off like a shot. Jake right behind him, his heart pounding. The airport was a maze of corridors and crowds, but Max weaved through them with single-minded focus, his nose leading him unerringly. Jake barely kept up, his radio crackling with confused demands from the other officers. Then Max skidded to a stop near a service elevator, his growl deepening. The doors were just closing, and inside, Jake caught a glimpse of a small figure in a cartoon t-shirt, his face pale with fear. The boy. And standing beside him, a woman in an airport staff uniform, her hand clamped tightly over the boy's mouth. Her eyes met Jake's for a split second before the doors slid shut. Jake slammed his fist against the elevator button, but it was too late. The display above the doors showed the elevator descending to the baggage handling area, an exit point. "They're heading for the tarmac," Jake muttered. He radioed for lockdown, but even as he did, he knew they were dealing with professionals. This wasn't just one man. This was a network, and the boy was the key to unraveling it. Max was already moving again, leading Jake toward a stairwell. As they burst through the door and into the chaotic underbelly of the airport, Jake's mind raced. Who was that woman? How many others were involved? And why was this boy so important that they'd risk everything to get him back? The answers were somewhere in the shadows ahead, and Jake had only one advantage. Max, the dog who'd seen the truth before anyone else. The stairwell plunged them into the mechanical heart of the airport, where the roar of baggage carousels and idling trucks swallowed all other sounds. Jake's boots pounded against metal steps as he followed Max's urgent lead, the dog's nose never leaving the scent trail even as the air grew thick with diesel fumes. The boy had been taken, not by some lone opportunist, but by someone who knew the airport's blind spots, who moved with chilling precision. That woman in the uniform hadn't hesitated. She'd looked right at Jake with the calm of a predator certain of its escape. Max hit the ground level at full sprint, weaving through pallets of luggage as Jake radioed their position, his voice raw against the noise. Suspects heading for Cargo Bay 7. Possible ground vehicle extraction. Static crackled in response. Too much interference. They were on their own. A crash echoed from ahead, metal on metal, followed by a child's muffled cry. Jake rounded a conveyor belt in time to see the woman shove the boy into the open cab of a baggage tug, its yellow paint streaked with grime. The engine snarled to life. Max launched forward, a black and tan blur, but the woman was faster. A pistol appeared in her hand like magic, its barrel flashing under fluorescent lights. The shot rang out, ricocheting off concrete near Jake's feet. He dove behind a stack of crates, heart hammering. This wasn't just trafficking. These people were armed, organized, willing to kill. The tug's wheels screeched as it lurched backward, its cargo bed swinging wide to reveal two more figures in maintenance coveralls, both armed. A full extraction team. Then the boy did something unexpected. As the woman turned to climb into the cab, he bit down hard on her wrist. She howled, the gun clattering to the pavement. In that split second of chaos, Max saw his opening. He hit the woman at knee height, sending her sprawling into a pile of mail sacks. The boy scrambled over the tug's seat, his tattered rabbit still clenched in one fist, and jumped, straight into the path of an oncoming cargo loader. Jake's shout lodged in his throat, but Max was already moving, intercepting the boy mid-fall and dragging him clear by his shirt collar. The loader's horn blared as it swerved, its massive tires missing them by inches. Jake reached them as the woman staggered upright, blood dripping from her nose. Her accomplices were closing in, weapons drawn. Time seemed to fracture. Then, a new sound. The wail of sirens, the thunder of boots. Airport SWAT poured through the bay doors, rifles raised. The woman's eyes met Jake's one last time, blazing with fury, before she spat on the ground and bolted for an emergency exit. One of her men went down under a tackle. The other vanished into the maze of cargo containers. The boy trembled against Max's side, his breath coming in ragged gulps. They said they'd hurt my mom," he whispered, the first full sentence he'd spoken. Jake crouched, blocking his view of the carnage. "What's your real name, kid?" The boy's fingers dug into Max's fur. "Benji. Benji Holloway." The name hit Jake like a punch. Holloway. Senator Eleanor Holloway's missing grandson. The case had dominated headlines 6 months ago, a political firestorm about a lax security at a charity gala. But the FBI had ruled it a custody dispute after the boy's father, the senator's estranged son-in-law, produced signed papers. Papers that now reeked of forgery. Max whined, nosing at Benji's pocket. Jake reached in and pulled out a crumpled photo. A woman with the boy's same wide eyes. Her face bruised, one arm in a cast. "Is this your mom?" Benji nodded, fresh tears cutting through dirt on his cheeks. "She tried to stop them when they took me from school. They hurt her. Then they told me she was dead." Shouts erupted near the exit. The woman in the uniform had been cornered, her back against a chain-link fence. Jake expected her to surrender. Instead, she reached into her collar and bit down. Foam bloomed at her lips before she collapsed. By the time medics arrived, she was gone. Suicide pills. Professional grade. The surviving gunman wasn't talking, but his tattoos told their own story. A serpent coiled around a globe, the symbol of the Black Vine, a transnational syndicate the DEA had been trying to dismantle for years. Jake carried Benji to a waiting ambulance, Max trotting beside them. The boy clung to Jake's neck, his whisper barely audible over the sirens. "There are others. Kids like me, in the dark place with the red door." Jake's blood turned to ice. This wasn't over, not even close. Somewhere out there, a red door waited, and behind it, answers that would burn. The ambulance doors slammed shut behind them, sealing Jake, Benji, and Max in a sterile bubble of fluorescent light as it sped toward the hospital. Benji had gone quiet again, his small fingers tracing the edges of the photo of his mother, his knees pulled up to his chest like a shield. Max lay across the boy's feet, a warm, steady weight, his ears twitching at every bump in the road. Jake watched them, his mind racing. Senator Holloway's grandson. A high-profile kidnapping disguised as a custody dispute. A syndicate willing to kill to keep their secrets. And now, a dark place with a red door. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit. Not yet. His phone buzzed. A call from the FBI field office. Agent Vasquez's voice was clipped, urgent. "We just raided David Mercer's apartment. Fake IDs, cash, and a hard drive hidden in a floor safe. It's encrypted, but we pulled one file before it self-deleted. A list of shipping routes and Jake." A pause. Senator Holloway's name was flagged in the metadata. Jake's grip tightened on the phone. "You're saying she's involved?" Vasquez exhaled sharply. "I'm saying someone wanted us to find that connection. The file was buried, but not deep enough. Feels like a setup." The ambulance hit a pothole, jostling them. Benji's head snapped up, his eyes wide with sudden panic. "They'll come for me again," he whispered. "They always find us." Jake leaned forward. Who, Benji? Who's coming? The boy's gaze dropped to Max, his fingers curling into the dog's fur. The quiet men, the ones who smell like medicine. Before Jake could press further, the ambulance screeched to a halt. The back doors flew open, but it wasn't the hospital. They were at a private airstrip, a sleek jet idling on the tarmac. A woman in a navy blazer stood waiting, her posture rigid. Jake's hand went to his sidearm. What the hell is this? The woman flashed a badge, Senate security. Senator Holloway's orders. The boy comes with us. Max growled, low and warning. His body tensed between Benji and the woman. Jake didn't move. Like hell he does. He's material witness in a federal case. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. The senator has reassigned jurisdiction. Your superiors have been notified. As if on cue, Jake's phone buzzed again. Deputy Chief Morrison's name flashed on the screen. He didn't need to answer to know what it would say. Benji's breath hitched. Don't let them take me, he pleaded, pressing into Max's side. Jake made his decision in a heartbeat. He stepped forward, blocking the woman's path. You want him? You go through me. For a moment, no one moved. Then the woman sighed, reaching into her blazer, but instead of a weapon, she pulled out a folded photograph. She handed it to Jake. Tell me that doesn't change things. The image was grainy, surveillance footage. Senator Holloway, unmistakable in her pearl necklace, standing in a dimly lit warehouse. And beside her, David Mercer. They were shaking hands. Jake's stomach dropped. Benji peeked at the photo, then recoiled. That's the place, he breathed. The dark place. The woman's voice turned icy. The senator will explain everything. But not here. Not with Blackvine operatives still in play. A new sound cut through the standoff. Rotor blades. A news helicopter circled overhead, its camera pointed squarely at them. The woman cursed. They're tracking us. She grabbed Benji's arm, but Max lunged, his teeth snapping inches from her wrist. Jake seized the moment. Run! He scooped up Benji and bolted for the ambulance, Max at his heels. The engine was still running. He wrenched the door open, shoved Benji inside, and slammed the gas before the doors were even shut. The woman's shouts faded behind them as they peeled onto the access road. Jake's hands shook on the wheel. He'd just gone rogue. With the senator's grandson and a dog. His phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from the chief, from the FBI, from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. In the back, Benji hugged Max tightly, his voice barely audible over the sirens Jake knew would come soon. I know where the red door is, he said. Jake met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Tell me. Benji's next word sent a chill down Jake's spine. It's under the big church, where the bad people take kids to make them forget. The ambulance careened down back roads, its sirens off, headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Jake kept checking the mirrors, expecting flashing lights or black SUVs to appear behind them at any moment. Benji had curled up on the stretcher, his arms wrapped around Max, who hadn't left his side since they fled the airstrip. The boy's words echoed in Jake's mind, the big church, where the bad people take kids to make them forget. It sounded like something out of a nightmare, but the fear in Benji's voice was real. Too real. Jake's phone had gone silent after the 20th missed call. They'd stopped buzzing, which was worse. It meant they were being tracked another way. He pulled over near an abandoned gas station, the ambulance's tires crunching over broken glass. They needed a new vehicle and fast. Benji stirred as Jake turned off the engine. Are we hiding now? He asked, his voice small. Jake nodded, forcing a calm he didn't feel. Just for a little bit, then we're going to find that church. Max whined. his ears pricking toward the tree line behind the station. Jake tensed. The dog had sensed something. Twig snapped, then another. Jake motioned for Benji to stay down as he eased his sidearm from its holster. The trees rustled, and a figure stepped out. Not a cop, not a fed. A teenager, maybe 16, his clothes dirty, his face gaunt. He froze when he saw Jake's gun, his hands flying up. I don't want trouble," he stammered. Jake kept the weapon raised. "Who are you?" The boy swallowed hard. "Name's Cole. I've been living out here since—" His gaze flicked to Benji, and his eyes widened. "You're one of them," he breathed. "One of the kids they took." Jake's pulse spiked. "You know about the church?" Cole's face twisted. "I got out 2 months ago. They drugged us, made us forget our names, our families, but I remembered." He tapped his temple. "Enough to run." Jake lowered the gun slightly. "Where is it?" Cole hesitated, then pointed west. "Old stone church off Route 9. Looks abandoned." But underneath, he shuddered. "That's where they keep the new ones. The ones they're training." A new wave of dread washed over Jake. Training for what? Before he could ask, Max let out a soft growl. Headlights appeared in the distance, moving fast. Cole paled. They patrol these roads at night looking for runaways. Jake made a split-second decision. Get in. Cole didn't hesitate. They piled into the ambulance just as the headlights rounded the bend. Jake floored it, the vehicle lurching onto the road. Behind them, the patrol car's siren whooped to life. The chase was chaos. Swerving through back alleys, clipping trash cans, the ambulance's suspension groaning in protest. Cole crouched beside Benji, his voice urgent. "You remember the red door?" Benji nodded. "It's where they took me after the tests." Cole's jaw clenched. They're not just selling kids, they're programming them. Erasing who they were, making them into perfect little ghosts. Jake's knuckles whitened on the wheel. For who? Cole met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Rich people, politicians, anyone who wants a kid they can control. The patrol car gained on them, its grille looming in the mirror. Then, a deafening bang. The ambulance's rear window shattered. Jake cursed, swerving hard. Max barked, his body shielding Benji from the glass. Cole yanked open the glove compartment, pulling out a flare gun. "You're gonna hate this," he warned, then fired it out the broken window. The flare arced into the patrol car's windshield, exploding in a burst of crimson light. The car veered wildly, crashing into a ditch. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing. Jake exhaled. Route 9, now! The ambulance raced through the night, its headlights carving a shaky path down the winding backroads toward Route 9. Jake's hands were slick on the wheel, his mind spinning with what Cole had just revealed. Kids being reprogrammed, erased, turned into blank slates for the powerful. Benji sat huddled between Max and Cole, his small fingers clutching the torn photo of his mother like a talisman. The boy hadn't spoken since the gunshot, but his wide eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, as if expecting the patrol car to reappear at any second. Cole was scanning the trees ahead, his posture rigid with tension. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a crumbling stone wall nearly swallowed by ivy. "Turn here. The church is half a mile down that service road." Jake killed the headlights and rolled to a stop. The ambulance wouldn't go unnoticed for long. They needed to move fast. He turned to Cole. "You sure you want to come back here?" The kid's face was pale but set. "Those are my friends in there," he said quietly. "Or what's left of them." Max whined, his nose pressed to the cracked window, his tail stiff. Jake didn't need the dog's reaction to know they were walking into something bad. But with Benji's knowledge and Cole's intel, this might be their only shot at exposing the operation before more kids vanished into the system. They moved in silence, sticking to the tree line as the outline of the church emerged. A Gothic monstrosity with boarded-up windows and a sagging steeple. No lights, no cars. On the surface, it looked abandoned. But as they crept closer, Jake spotted the details that didn't fit. Fresh tire tracks in the mud, a faint hum of generators, and the two clean edges of a cellar door nearly hidden by overgrown grass. Benji's breath hitched. "That's it," he whispered. "The red door is under there." Cole dropped to his knees, brushing away leaves to reveal a keypad beside the cellar entrance. "They change the code every week," he muttered. "But the guards are lazy. They use dates." His fingers hovered over the keys, then stopped. A sound cut through the night. The distant crunch of gravel. Headlights flickered through the trees. Someone was coming. Jake yanked them all into the shadow of the church's foundation just as a black van rolled into the clearing. Two men stepped out, their voices carrying in the cold air. "Another transfer tonight, Senator's orders." The second man grunted. "Which batch?" "The primaries. They're ready for placement." Jake's blood ran cold. Placement. Like they were discussing furniture, not children. The men punched in the code. Cole's eyes locked onto their fingers and disappeared down the cellar stairs. The second the door shut, Cole lunged for the keypad. "Got it," he breathed, tapping in the numbers. The lock clicked. Jake hesitated. This was it. No backup, no plan beyond getting proof. He met Benji's terrified eyes. Stay behind Max, no matter what. The boy nodded, his small hand fisting in the dog's fur. The stairs led to a sterile white hallway that looked nothing like a church basement. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating doors with numbered keypads. The air smelled like antiseptic and something worse. Copper and fear. Max's nose twitched, his body tense. Then they heard it, the muffled sound of crying. Jake followed the sound to a reinforced door marked Intake. The window revealed a nightmare. A dozen kids in hospital gowns sat on cots, their faces blank, their wrists bandaged. Fourth, stands lined the walls. A man in a lab coat was injecting something into a little girl's arm as she stared vacantly ahead. But it was the woman standing beside him that made Jake's breath stop. Senator Holloway, her pearl necklace gleaming under the lights, her face calm as she reviewed a clipboard. Benji let out a whimper. "That's her," he choked, "the lady who told them to take me." The pieces crashed together. This wasn't just a trafficking ring, it was a factory. And the senator wasn't a victim, she was the architect. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry wasps as Jake pressed closer to the door's narrow window, his stomach churning at the sight of Senator Holloway calmly observing the children being prepped for whatever nightmare they called placement. Max let out a barely audible growl, his body rigid against Jake's leg, while Benji's fingers dug into the fabric of Jake's sleeve like he was afraid the ground might swallow him whole. Cole's breath came in short, sharp bursts beside them, his face pale under the harsh lighting. "They're priming them," he whispered, his voice cracking. "The drugs make them pliable, like blank dolls, then they rewrite them." Jake didn't ask how Cole knew. The haunted look in the kid's eyes said enough. A sudden clang echoed down the hall, a door slamming. Jake yanked them all into a supply closet just as footsteps approached. Through the crack in the door, he watched one of the guards from the van stride past, a radio crackling at his hip. Delivery team en route to the airstrip. Packages prepped. The voice on the other end responded, too staticky to decipher, but the guard's next words turned Jake's blood to ice. Copy that. The senator will accompany the primary to D.C. for final conditioning. D.C. Final conditioning. The words slithered through Jake's mind like poison. This wasn't just some isolated horror. It was a pipeline, and it led straight to the heart of power. He waited until the footsteps faded before nudging the closet door open. They needed evidence. Hard proof that couldn't be buried. His eyes landed on a clipboard hanging outside one of the rooms. Patient logs. He snatched it, scanning the entries under the dim glow of his phone. Coded names, dosage charts, and at the bottom of the page, a familiar symbol, the serpent and globe tattoo of the black vine. But inked beside it, another logo Jake recognized from news briefings, the crest of the Holloway Foundation. The senator's charity. A soft whimper from Benji snapped Jake's attention back. The boy was staring at the far end of the hall, where a heavy red door stood slightly ajar. "That's where they take you after," he breathed. "Where the machines are." Cole stiffened. "They don't just drug you, they break you in there." Max's ears flattened against his skull, his nose twitching toward the door like he could smell the fear seeping from the cracks. Jake made a decision. "Cole, take Benji and find a way out. Headlights in the trees, west of the church. There's an old ranger station about 2 miles out. Get there and call this number." He scrawled Agent Vasquez's direct line on the clipboard. "Tell her everything, everything." Cole shook his head. "What about you?" Jake's jaw tightened as he handed Benji Max's leash. The dog whined, but didn't resist. "I'm going through that door." The moment Cole and Benji vanished around the corner, Jake moved. The red door opened silently, revealing a room that looked like a cross between a hospital OR and a tech lab. Banks of monitors flickered with brainwave patterns. A chair studded with electrodes dominated the center, and strapped into it, a boy no older than Benji, his eyes glazed, his mouth slack around a rubber bit. A man in scrubs adjusted a headset over the kid's temples, oblivious as Jake slipped inside and pressed himself behind a server rack. Then Senator Holloway's voice rang out, crisp and commanding. "Proceed with the neural overlay. We're behind schedule." The technician hesitated. "Senator, his vitals are unstable. Another round could—" "Do it." The senator's tone brooked no argument. "This one's destined for the Vanderbilts. They paid for a clean slate, not a damaged product." Jake's fingers clenched around his phone, recording every word. But as the machine powered up with a high-pitched whine, the boy in the chair began to seize. Alarms blared. The senator barely glanced up from her tablet. "Sedate him and prep the next candidate. We'll harvest the organs instead." That's when Jake stepped out of the shadows. Nobody move. His gun was steady, but his voice burned with rage. The technician froze. The senator, damn her, just sighed. "Officer Rivera, I'd say I'm surprised, but we both know you're too stubborn to die quietly." She set down her tablet. "How much did the boy tell you?" Behind her, the monitors flickered. The door creaked. And then, chaos. The senator's smile didn't waver as Jake kept his gun trained on her. The air in the room thick with the metallic scent of fear and the sterile bite of antiseptic. The boy in the chair had gone limp, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. The technician stood frozen, his hands hovering over the control panel like he was waiting for permission to move. "You don't understand what you're interfering with, officer," Holloway said, her voice smooth, almost amused. "This isn't just about money, it's about legacy." Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're trafficking kids. Dressing it up doesn't change what it is." A flicker of irritation crossed the senator's face. Before she could respond, the door burst open, and Max charged in, teeth bared, his leash dangling broken from his collar. Benji and Cole stumbled in behind him, their faces flushed from running. Jake's stomach dropped. They were supposed to be gone, but Benji's eyes were locked onto the unconscious boy in the chair. "That's Liam," he whispered, from the dark place. The senator's composure cracked. How did they— Then she saw Cole, and her expression turned venomous. "You. I should have known you'd crawl back." Cole glared back, his hands balled into fists. "You promised you'd let my sister go if I didn't talk." Holloway's lip curled. "And yet, here you are." A siren wailed somewhere deep in the facility. The technician lunged for a red button on the wall, but Max was faster. The dog hit him mid-motion, knocking him to the ground with a snarl. The senator didn't flinch. "It doesn't matter," she said, pulling a sleek phone from her pocket. "The cleanup crew is already on its way. You'll all be ghosts by sunrise." Jake's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned. But then Benji did something unexpected. He darted to the control panel, his small fingers flying over the keys. The monitors flickered. A warning flashed. Neural override disengaged. The boy in the chair, Liam, jolted awake with a gasp, his eyes wild but clear. Holloway's calm shattered. "What did you do?" Benji backed away, his voice trembling but defiant. "I remembered the codes. From when they did it to me." The senator moved faster than Jake expected. A pistol appeared in her hand, not aimed at him but at Benji. Max lunged, the gun went off. The bullet grazed the dog's shoulder, sending him skidding across the floor with a yelp. Jake fired back. The senator staggered, her sleeve blooming red, but she kept her footing. "You're too late," she spat. "The program is bigger than me, bigger than you. The buyers are already in place. The world is already in place." Then the walls shook. A deafening explosion rocked the facility, dust raining from the ceiling. The monitors shorted out in a shower of sparks. Distant shouts echoed through the halls, not the cleanup crew. Gunfire. Jake's radio crackled to life. Vasquez's voice, strained but triumphant. "Rivera, if you're alive in there, we're coming in hot. Interpol just raided the Holloway Foundation's D.C. office. We've got warrants, names, everything." The senator's face went slack with disbelief. For the first time, she looked afraid. Jake didn't hesitate. He wrenched the gun from her hand and shoved her toward Cole. "Hold her. The feds will want to talk." Then he turned to Benji, who was crouched beside Max, pressing his torn shirt to the dog's bleeding shoulder. "Is he okay?" The boy nodded, his eyes glistening. "He saved me, again." Another explosion, closer this time. The ceiling groaned. They had minutes before the whole place came down. Jake hauled Liam from the chair while Cole dragged the dazed technician to his feet. "Move!" he barked. They ran, past collapsing hallways, through clouds of dust and smoke, toward the faint glow of emergency exit signs. Behind them, the senator's voice rose in one last, furious scream. "You think this changes anything? The machine doesn't stop. It adapts." Then the world went white. The explosion sent them sprawling into the dirt outside the church, the force of the blast ripping through the night like a thunderclap. Jake rolled onto his back, his ears ringing, his vision swimming with smoke and sparks. Beside him, Max whined softly, his fur matted with blood and dust, but his tail thumped weakly against the ground when Jake reached for him. Benji and Liam lay a few feet away, coughing but alive, their small frames curled together like they were bracing for another blast. Cole was already on his knees, dragging the dazed technician with him, his face streaked with soot and something fiercer, vengeance. The senator was gone, swallowed by the collapsing ruin of her own operation, but her last words clung to Jake like a curse. The machine doesn't stop. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the trees as federal vehicles skidded to a halt around them. Agent Vasquez was the first out, her usually immaculate suit smudged with ash, her expression torn between relief and fury. "You absolute idiot," she snapped at Jake, yanking him upright. "You could have gotten yourself killed." But her grip on his arm was tight, almost desperate. Behind her, Interpol agents swarmed the wreckage, their radios buzzing with frantic updates. Jake's head spun as Vasquez rattled off the fallout. Raids in 3 countries, high-profile arrests, a data dump from the Holloway Foundation servers that was currently burning through every intelligence agency's servers. "We found the buyer list," she said quietly. "Politicians, CEOSA, few names even we can't touch yet." Then Benji let out a choked cry. Jake turned just in time to see the boy lurch forward, his small hands scrabbling at a piece of smoldering debris. At first, Jake thought he was hurt, but then he saw what Benji had spotted, a glint of metal under the rubble. A safe. The explosion had cracked it open like an egg, and inside, nestled among stacks of cash and passports, was a single black ledger. Benji didn't touch it. He just stared, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. That's the book," he whispered. "The one they used to show us to the buyers, like a menu." Jake's stomach turned. He reached for the ledger, flipping it open with numb fingers. Page after page of children's names, photos, and, God help him, specifications. Height, eye color, IQ scores. And beside each entry a list of bids. The highest was circled in red. Jake's vision tunneled on one name in particular, Eli Rosenberg. Age 6, brown hair, blue eyes, musically gifted. Last seen Marseille, France. The date matched Benji's kidnapping. A hand clamped down on Jake's shoulder. Vasquez's face was grim as she took the ledger. "We'll find them," she said. "All of them." But Jake wasn't listening. His attention had snagged on something else. A loose page tucked into the back of the ledger. A shipping manifest. And at the top, a logo that made his blood freeze. A stylized V entwined with a lotus flower. The Vanderbilt family crest. Cole made a raw, wounded sound. "That's where they took my sister." The Vanderbilt name hit Jake like a physical blow. Old money, political influence. The kind of power that didn't just open doors but erased them entirely. The manifest in his hands listed coordinates, not an address, somewhere off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. A private island, of course it was. Vasquez was already on the phone, barking orders about warrants and naval support, but Jake knew the truth. They'd never get clearance to storm a Vanderbilt property. Not in time, not without irrefutable proof. And by then, whatever was happening on that island would be over, the evidence sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic. Max nudged Jake's leg, his warm brown eyes locked onto his handler's face like he could read every desperate thought. The dog's shoulder was bandaged now, the bullet graze cleaned and stitched by paramedics, but he refused to rest, his body tense with the same urgency humming through Jake's veins. Benji and Liam were bundled into a waiting ambulance, their faces pressed to the window as federal agents swarmed around them. Cole stood apart, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the horizon like he could see the island from here. "They'll move her," he said quietly. "The second they realize the church is compromised, they'll take my sister somewhere even deeper." His voice cracked. "Somewhere we'll never find her." Jake made a decision. He grabbed Vasquez's arm, pulling her away from the chaos. "We need to go now, before the Vanderbilts get word." Vasquez's jaw tightened. "You're not hearing me, Rivera. There is no we. This is Interpol jurisdiction now. You're a material witness. Half the people on that ledger are politically connected. You'll be lucky if you're not in protective custody by morning." Jake didn't blink. "Then I guess it's a good thing you're not going to tell them." For a long moment they just stared at each other. Then Vasquez sighed, rubbing her temples. "There's a Coast Guard cutter prepping in Boston Harbor. Surveillance only. They won't engage without direct orders." She pressed a keycard into Jake's palm. "Don't make me regret this." 3 hours later, Jake stood on the deck of the cutter, the salt wind biting his face as the island came into view. A sprawling compound of glass and steel masquerading as a luxury retreat. Max leaned against his leg, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar scents. Cole was a silent shadow beside them, his hands clenched around the railing. No one spoke. The plan was simple. Get in, find proof, get out. But plans had a way of unraveling. They docked under the cover of a maintenance crew, their uniforms borrowed, their IDs fake. The island security was tight, but not tight enough to question a dog handler with a German shepherd, especially one with Max's training. Jake kept his head down as they moved through manicured gardens, past patrolling guards with earpieces and holstered guns. The compound hummed with activity, black SUVs coming and going, but it was the basement level that set Max on edge. The dog's ears pricked forward, his body rigid as he sniffed the air. Jake followed his gaze to a discreet service elevator. The keypad beside it bore the same Lotus and V crest. Cole's breath hitched. That's where they'll be. They waited until shift change, when the guards were distracted, then slipped inside. The elevator descended silently, the numbers on the panel ticking down, B1, B2, B3. The doors opened onto a hallway so pristine it could have been a hospital. Or a lab. The hum of machinery vibrated through the walls. Distantly, a child's voice sang a nursery rhyme, the notes eerily flat. Then the screaming started. The scream tore through the sterile hallway like a knife, jagged and raw. A sound no child should ever make. Jake broke into a run before his brain could process the order, Max surging ahead with a snarl, his injured leg forgotten in the rush. Cole was right behind them, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The hallway ended at a heavy steel door, its small reinforced window offering a glimpse into the nightmare beyond. Inside, a white-walled room held a scene straight from a dystopian horror. Children in identical gray pajamas sat strapped to reclining chairs, their heads encased in sleek metal helmets studded with blinking lights. Wires snaked from the helmets to a central console where a man in a lab coat adjusted dials with clinical precision. On a raised platform overlooking it all stood a woman in a cream-colored suit, Eleanor Vanderbilt herself, her silver blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her expression one of mild interest, as if she were watching a moderately engaging play. But it was the boy in the center chair who'd screamed. His small body convulsed against the restraints, his face contorted in pain as the machine hummed louder. A screen above him displayed a rapidly scrolling series of images. A woman's face, his mother, a playground, a stuffed bear, each one dissolving into static as the machine worked, erasing, rewriting. Jake didn't think. He kicked open the door. Chaos erupted. Guards lunged for weapons. The scientist fumbled for a panic button. Max hit the first guard mid-stride, his teeth sinking into the man's wrist with a crunch. Jake's gun found Eleanor Vanderbilt's face before she could so much as gasp. "Shut it down," he growled. "Now." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Eleanor sighed, as if annoyed by a trivial inconvenience. "Officer Rivera, I wondered when you'd show up." She nodded to the scientist. "Terminate the session." The machine powered down with a whine. The boy went limp, tears cutting clean tracks down his cheeks. Cole was already at the chairs, frantically unbuckling straps. The other children stared blankly, their eyes hollow. One girl, no older than Benji, reached for Cole's sleeve. "Are you here to take us to the new families?" she asked, her voice robotic. Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. Eleanor's smile didn't waver. "You can't win," she said softly. "Even if you walk out of here, even if you drag me into court, the need won't disappear. People like us, we always find a way." A crash echoed from the hallway, shouting, the staccato pop of gunfire. Vasquez's voice barked over a megaphone. "FBI! Drop your weapons!" Eleanor's composure cracked. "You brought feds to my—" Jake never let her finish. He pistol-whipped her across the temple, sending her crumpling to the floor. "Not everything's for sale," he muttered. The aftermath was a blur. Vasquez's team swarmed the compound, freeing children, arresting guards, bagging evidence. Max stayed glued to Jake's side, his body vibrating with exhaustion, but his eyes alert. Cole clung to a dark-haired girl, his sister, finally found, her face still blank, but her fingers clutching his like a lifeline. On the dock at dawn, as the first rays of sun painted the ocean gold, Vasquez handed Jake a steaming cup of coffee. "We got it all," she said. "The servers, the financial trails, even Holloway's confession from her hospital bed, it's over." Jake watched a medic wrap a blanket around a shivering child. "It's never over," he said quietly. But for now it was enough. Moral lesson. The world is full of shadows, and the most dangerous monsters don't lurk in alleys. They sit in boardrooms and Senate chambers. But courage isn't about fighting alone. It's about listening to the quiet barks of truth, standing when others look away, and remembering that even in the darkest places, a single act of defiance can tear the night apart. Some heroes wear badges, some have fur and 4 legs, and some are just children who refuse to forget their own names.